Hey, greetings. It's Mansho and the Washa Coma House Initiative, culturally based counseling and consulting. We want to ask a question. A, are you overwhelmed, confused, and just disgusted with what you're seeing around the world when it comes to Black relationships, but especially in the Western world? I'm sure you've probably seen a billion podcasts pop up. Everybody's talking about relationships. There's like a draw of Black people starting to go to therapy and counseling. They unsure what's happening or what they should be looking for, but everybody's admitting, hey, we jacked up. So we looking for some direction, and we're starting to move in new spaces in terms of our social environment, especially in the West, in the United States, for example, where we are. You're seeing this movement, but with it comes the sickness that everybody has. So it's a lot of blame game. It's a lot of the manosphere and the feminist movement at war, gender wars happening, mud is being thrown, and the blame game is at a all-time peak, and is blowing a lot of people's wig, and they just tired of it. So are you one of these people that are noticing this reality happening and this experience, or are you participating in it?
It's a good question.
Yes.
It needs to be considered as we decide what we're taking in around relationships. So the first pillar of our work is psychological reparation. And as counselors, we're both counselors. We both have master's degrees. We're both really taking the art of counseling very seriously. We need psychological healing, and that is not necessarily what's happening right now. We're more processing pain than really repairing psychologically.
Yeah, I think when people are confused about the difference of healing, because that's a buzzword too. Everybody's healing now, and God knows we definitely need healing. Healing is perpetual when you're an oppressed people. Healing is perpetual when you're living in your culture. You need to heal from speaking English if you're not from England, and that language has been put on you as your only way to communicate. Your original tongues have been stolen. So healing has so many dimensions and so many levels, but there is a difference between healing and processing pain. So like if I wanted to speak Kiswahili or Medunetta or any beautiful language that is indigenous to Black life and Black existence, I could say, hey, this ain't even my language, and process how deep it is that billions of people have been their language, their way of communicating has been taken from them. We can have conversation about that all day. We're processing the pain of that. But when we take up a program and start learning the language, visit the land, and really begin to develop syntax and begin to speak this in our daily lives, now we've moved from processing to actually healing. And that metaphor is real, because a lot of times in relationship dynamics, traumatic pain happens and we just hold on to the pain and process it, and we call that healing. But healing is proactive action toward balance or stasis. And a lot of people who say they're healing, they ain't healing.
And the next pillar that we do all of our work, that we make an offer and through all of our work, is relationship education. So this is a big one. This is why we have written books. This is why
Absolutely.
we do workshops. This is why we are offering the Black Love School.
Absolutely.
It's because there's an element in relationships that we just have not been taught. So
Yes.
some of us are not having success because we don't know what is involved in a relationship and how to be our best self, how to make room for the other person, and how to communicate, how to resolve conflict, how to have sex. We really don't know the right way of being in relationship. So an important element beyond the processing of pain, even moving in the direction that you want to go to for stasis, is knowing how to do it. And that involves some type of learning. And your education needs to come from a culturally relevant space. So it's not just
Absolutely.
learning the ins and outs of how to talk. Most of us are speaking some language, even if it is the colonizer language, we think we can connect based on that. But we need to understand that the education that we're getting, whether it was from our caregivers, whether it's from movies, whether it's from television, whether it's made up in our minds based on what we saw, is not necessarily a culturally relevant education. It's not what would have us live by our highest values. And this is often why we get in trouble in relationships, because we're doing things that we don't even understand why we're doing it. We're not understanding what another person is doing, and we don't know how to process it. So the trade out is to just get a new relationship or in some way reinvent ourselves, but we're not reinventing our thinking or our healing or our skill set. And that's really what education should be doing, is helping you become a master of something.
Yeah. I think we in a generation now where everybody's trying to show you some hack or some shortcut. Relationships don't have that. And it's culture that gives us the art and science, or the why and how of relationships. So we coined the term, the art and science of Black love culture. So if you hear that term, you know that we actually created that term, but it is really an expression that signifies that there is an art, abstract energy, a cyclical, philosophical approach to relationships, often called the feminine side of love. And then there is a science, a methodological, practical step technique, linear, oftentimes, side of love, often called the masculine side of love. So Black people have a unique vibratory resonance in the universe, and we have a specific way we relate to ourselves, nature, and all people, places, and things that we interact with. And it's different than other people. We cannot go to other people to get educated because our situation is unique. First of all, our range of perception is greater than anybody else's. We are the parent people of humanity, and we're currently in a ma'afa that requires a specific information for us to rise up. So to try to be quoting the love languages or some other stuff that we are caught up in, we should be able to see quickly that, like with that, the 5 love languages, it's been out since the early 90s, and Black relationships have gone worse and worse and worse. But we keep saying that our love language is this and that. And especially when we're receiving that information from a group of people whose love language is oppression and enslavement. So acts of enslavement and oppression. You should never be going to people who have oppressed you trying to figure out how to be a better lover. That's insanity. So, we need to just be educated about the art and science, or the why and how of how to do love.
You can go ahead with the next pillar.
So the third pillar, so we got psychological reparation. We all need to heal individually, and then we need collective healing. We have relationship education. We need to know how to do the what and the why and the how. And then we have cultural initiation. And cultural initiation is just that, unlocking that divinity. We believe as African people that everything that you need to be the best version of yourself, the answer to every challenge or question in the universe, lies deep within you. It was supplanted in your ancestral DNA when you were conceived, and it represents your unconscious mind, which is different than the subconscious or the conscious mind. So anything can be pulled out with the right guidance and the right unlocking. And so cultural initiation basically is a methodological way to unlock the God force in you. And we definitely need that in our relationships.
We need the intentional, instructional kind of over education of, this is how you can communicate. This is how you can sync your schedules. This is how you can have better intimacy and better sex. And then there's a knowing that comes through experiential learning, which is part of your initiatory process, and we have been participating in initiation for, again, decades. Yes, of our
entire
lives,
relationship,
but definitely our entire relationship.
Before that,
and I think it's another way of knowing, and it's extremely important to know and have like this firsthand knowledge, especially again when it comes to relationships, because a lot of the things that we think we know or that we've been introduced to, not necessarily initiated in, but introduced to in a sense, we're embodying things that are foreign to us, and so what happens is we don't have an intimate knowing of how things should be when they're working.
Right,
So if we
right.
don't know the best practices because we didn't have an example, then we have a problem. If we had an example but weren't taught best practices, which most of our parents don't teach in the same intentional way they teach about driving and doing the laundry and doing the dishes, we often don't have a culture that says we should intentionally teach about relationships in that way. So we don't even have great knowing within good examples, right? So we just, again, are left to our own devices to make up what was happening, even if we could see a great relationship. So it's extremely important for us to return to a cultural form of unlocking.
Absolutely.
Something that is not foreign to us, something that is born within us, given to us, and something that is going to guide us in the direction that we want to go. So that...
And that's operative, the direction we want to go.
Right. It is operative because in relationships, I don't know if this happens in it happens everywhere, but in relationships, people often say what they don't want. Right. As counselors, when we ask people, what would you really like this relationship to be? What's the partner that you absolutely would just magnetize to you? And we tell people, amazingly, if you've ever worked with us, you know this. We tell people, if you had a magic wand, so you don't even have to know how it's going to happen. All you got to do is be imaginative and creative. And often the first thing that people say is, well, I don't want blah, 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 blah. So this is, just a sign of the need for cultural
the
healing.
Despair that's out here.
It's something that we need to know educationally to focus on what we want and not what we don't want. Yeah. And it's just something that we need to embody. So I think that example is such a reminder of how we really need the 3 pillars in our work as part of the healing that goes from within to the external world, so that you can actually relate with people and relate with your environment. It's extremely important that we embrace working with ourselves and working in relationship with others through these 3 pillars.
Yeah, so this is, in all of our stuff, the Black Love School, the Online Relationship Academy, Acoma House Initiative Counseling, Coaching, and Consulting, the Rites of Passage programs for men, Acoma King, the Rites of Passage for women, Acoma Queen, our communication program, Acoma Heart to Heart, Acoma Day, everything that it is that we offer under the banner of relationships for singles, couples, families, and organizations is based on these 3 pillars, because whether it is communal interaction, whether it is siblings, whether it is business, whether it is friendships, whether it is family, and specifically the seed of it all, the seed of every nation is the intimate relationship. We focus on these 3 pillars of psychological reparation, relationship education, and cultural initiation. And as we move out here in these spaces, it's kind of weird out here because a lot of people talking, they got testimonies, but they don't have solutions. A lot of people telling stories, but they can't solve problems. A lot of people throwing mud, but as a group of people, we're getting worse and worse and worse in relationships. And so I'm hearing from a lot of people, young and old, single and mated or married, that it's just disgusting because a lot of people out here are really unqualified to be leading. Everybody has the right to share their opinion, but when you start leading people into thought with things, then it runs the risk of destroying a bunch of people, and it makes the psychological repair that much greater. So we are out here as an alternative and as an offering for help and success.
Which one of these pillars you think is something that you've entertained, something that you've sought out?
What you need the most?
Which one do you think what do you think you need the most, and do you know where to go to get it? That's what we would really like to know.
Right.
So,
well, we are definitely it.
We know you're here for part of it.
Let me just
but
say
where
that.
else other than here?
Yeah. Absolutely.
So let us know in the comments which pillar you think is the most important for you right now, and what you think, of course, about our Black nation, our global need right now. And
we look forward to serving you. So as always, we greet you in eternal words of Black love culture and say,
Nyakoma.